Have you ever noticed that you take some time to get warmed up in friendlies or, say, online with quickplay? That is, you start off slow, but after a good 15 minutes of playing the same person and getting put to pasture, you start to hit your stride and feel more confident against the person you're playing. Though it feels good in the moment to catch up like that, this dynamic, unfortunately, is not good. For many of us, this cycle repeats for several of the new people we play. But why? Where did all of that improvement go from the last person? Improvement, I think we can all agree on, entails positive changes that are at least transferable. I feel like it'd be a bit of an abuse of the word improvement to say we improved if we perform better against one person, and one person exclusively. If it takes you more than a small handful of matches to make game-winning adaptations against someone, and by small handful I mean at maximum 3, then you're learning things that you will never ever have time to learn in a tournament setting. You're learning player-specific nuances and becoming comfortable with knowledge that is most likely unique to that one person, could change at any time, and by those two accounts therefore is not transferable or really that useful. Depending on the kind of format you're playing, be it a best of 3, best of 5, first to 10, or whatever, the kind of information that you can and should realistically gather and rely upon in order to adapt changes. Generally speaking, there are 2 levels of information. 1. Generic information, and 2. Unique information. Generic information is simply what you can know about someone independent of experience against them or broad categories of behavior that aren't unique to them or their character necessarily. For example, let's say I'm about to fight a really good Roy in tournament. What do I know about Roy that never changes or at least has limited variation? For instance, he can approach with full hop forward air, and at some point it's likely he'll try to neutral air out of shield. Now, this is good actionable information. As we go into the match, I make a few simple observations about this person that I can make about any opponent. What does he do when I hit him into the air? He jumps away. That's pretty important to know. How does he respond to corner pressure? He jumps. Again, this behavior isn't unique to Roy or my opponent, but something anyone might potentially do in a similar situation, hence generic information. This is all very basic information you can easily identify and use within the first seconds of the match, and the kind of information you need to apply within the span of 2 to 3 matches, otherwise you gain the esteemed title of pot filler. But of course, this is by no means an exhaustive list of such nuggets of information. Rather, the guiding principles of generic information are that it can be known or narrowed down ahead of time without any knowledge of the player themselves, and that it isn't a behavior unique to a specific player. That is, to use the earlier example, when hit into the air against Ganon, you have only so many options to not get hit irrespective of who you are as a player and who you use. Unique information, on the other hand, describes behaviors and sequences that are too nuanced and too specific to realistically keep a mental checklist of. Rather, they're behaviors and sequences to which you slowly become conditioned for better or for worse. For example, in a lot of my matches, I like to terrorize people on the ledge by trumping them to plant the seeds of doubt, and then mostly going for fake-outs from there on. Within the span of a match or two, most people will all too gladly hurl themselves from the ledge when they see 300 pounds of Ganon a-comin'. That being said, after several matches, most people get the hint after being kicked in the face repeatedly. They become comfortable with that pattern, and they stop responding to my fake-outs. The fact that I go for trumps and then fake people out thereafter is a very specific sequence, and therefore hard to spot if you're not looking for it or haven't been repeatedly exposed to it over the course of many matches. Unique information is time expensive to acquire and is the kind of information we gather, usually implicitly or at a subconscious level, over the course of many matches, which for most tournament formats means it's not realistically attainable and therefore not useful. These 2 kinds of concepts might be helpful to visualize. In this first image, all these little red dots represent one person's behaviors and preferences, and in this second one, all these green dots represent another person's behaviors and preferences, and as you can see, both sets are slightly different. What we want is the simplest line possible that fits well for both sets of points, but not necessarily perfectly, like this. This represents adapting with generic information, fitting well to new data. Compare that line to this one. This line performs gymnastic bends and contours almost perfectly to the red points, but it doesn't fit really at all to the green points. This represents adapting with unique information. You fit great to one set of data, but that extremely specific curve won't do you any favors with new data, or to remind us of what that data represents, it won't do you any favors in adapting to new opponents. Again, the Reader's Digest version of all this is that in tournament, the effective gathering of useful, available, and appropriate information is a necessary skill. If you're on quickplay, and you're still struggling against someone after a max of 3 matches, unless you're actively saving replays, writing down observations somewhere for later review, or just simply having fun, odds are pretty good that you're hardwiring yourself to the other person's exact preferences, which, while not bad, isn't particularly good either, and certainly not useful. The bottom line, be cautious when determining if you've actually improved after a long string of matches, or if you've just overfitted yourself to one unique opponent. Again, another SmashConceptions done pretty much at a whim. I'm really awful at getting to the videos I promise ahead of time, and for that I really do apologize. All the same, I hope this particular entry was helpful, and that you'll all stick with me just a little longer. And of course, thank you all for watching. As always, if you did like the video and found it worthy of your subscription, like, or share, I'd encourage you to do at least one if not all 3, as they always go a long way in motivating the continuation of this series.